Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Samambonam, Chapter 23, the Brahmana's Wives Blessed. And today we are reading text 14. Please repeat after me. Mam Nyapayata Patnibhyaha Sasankarshanam Agatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Yaha Vaha Snigdhaha Mai Ushitaha Dhiya Mam Nyapayata Patnibhya Sasankarshanamagatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Va Snigdha Mayushita Dhiya Mam Yapayata Patnibhya Sasankarshanamagatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Va Snigdha Mayushita Dhiya Mam Yapayata Patnibhya Sasankarshanamagatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Va Snigdha Mayushita Dhiya Sasankarshanamagatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Va Snigdha Mayushita Dhiya. Matajis. Mam Nyapayata Patnibhya Sasankarshanamagatam Dasyanti Kamam Annam Va Snigdha Mayushita Dhiya. Mam, me, Nyapayata, please announce. Patnibhya, to the wives. Sasankarshanam, together with Lord Balaram. Agatam, arrived. Dasyanti, they will give. Kamam, as much as you desire. Annam, food. Vaha, to you. Snigdha, affectionate. Mai, in me. Ushita, residing. Dhiya, with their intelligence. Translation purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Lord Krishna said, tell the wives of the Brahmanas that I have come here with Lord Shankarshana. They will certainly give you all the food you want, for they are most affectionate toward me, and indeed with their intelligence reside in me alone. Purport. While physically the wives of the Brahmanas remained at home, within their minds they resided in the Supreme Lord Krishna because of intense affection for him. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the reason Lord Krishna did not have the cowherd boys tell the Brahmanas' wives he was hungry is that he knew this would severely distress these devoted ladies. Simply out of affection for Lord Krishna, however, the wives would be happy to give all the food requested of them. They would not heed their husbands' prohibitions since they resided within the Lord through their transcendental intelligence. I'll read the translation again. Lord Krishna said, "Tell the wives of the Brahmanas that I have come here with Lord Shankarshana. They will certainly give you all the food you want, for they are most affectionate toward me, and indeed, with their intelligence, reside in me alone." So we are discussing this particular pastime where after he played his pastimes with the young girls, stealing their garments. We discussed that in the last chapter. So from that place onwards, Krishna and the cowherd boys, they moved ahead and they went far away from Vrindavan, that is mentioned. So, and when they went away, then, or when they traveled far away from Vrindavan, the boys felt hungry. And Krishna asked them to request the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifice there to give them some food. And it was there. It's not that they had to cook or something, because in sacrifice so much anna, habishana would be required. So all the food items are already present there. So Krishna wanted these young boys to go and ask them. But as we saw in the previous verses, the Brahmanas, they did not say yes or they did not say no also. They were indifferent to them. Right. So there are three things. No? When a person comes and asks a question, either we say yes or either we say no. And we have to expand this principle also. So either we like somebody or dislike somebody. But then what the Brahmanas showed here is completely disinterest, or they are indifference to the boys. So that's even more horrible in the sense. Yesterday's class also we saw that it was quite insulting to these cowherd boys who are eternal associates of Krishna. But the way the Brahmanas dealt with them was that of indifference. Okay, either you like somebody or you don't like somebody, but there's an indifference where there's not even response. In a cultured society or in a proper society, we would see that either you respond in a positive manner or a negative manner, but not that you don't respond at all. It's not considered as a cultured thing. And Brahmanas, who are supposed to be the highest class among all the Varnas, they are at least supposed to set an example, or they're at least supposed to project the qualities that if someone comes and asks you something, either you say yes or at least say no, not that you completely neglect them as if they do not even exist. So this kind of attitude is, philosophically we have to say, this kind of attitude is followed by the impersonalists, who for their own needs, they would do whatever they need for, or whatever has to be done, they will do for their own self-satisfaction or sense gratification, but they will not pay any heed to the reality, which is the absolute truth. Impersonalists, they will follow all the Vedic system, but then ultimately everything is meant only for their own satisfaction, right? From those karmakandis who are performing Vedic sacrifices like these Brahmanas, their main goal was to go to the heavenly planets, and they are indifferent. It looks like that they are not really bothered, or they are not really dedicated to these demigods or dedicated to Lord Vishnu, but they just want to have their goal accomplished, that is to elevate themselves to heavenly planets. So this is significant. This is reflecting their attitude, their philosophy in life, which is impersonal. Whatever they have to get, they will get, and they will do things for that. But they will not dedicate themselves to anything, or there is no conception of pleasing anybody else also. So the wives who are living with these Brahmanas, maybe they are also neglected in that manner, because it just reflects on the attitude of these Brahmanas. And we really have to see, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it comes in 7th canto, chapter 1. So it is mentioned that Krishna, that one can achieve Krishna even if one is fearful of him or one has enviousness for him. Right? This shloka comes, Gopya Kamad Bhayat Kamso Dveshat Chaidyadeyo Nripaha Sambandhat Vishnaya Snehad Yuyam Bhaktya Vayam Vibhu. So Narad Muni is speaking this, and he says that the gopis attained perfection by having sensual desires or lusty desires to Krishna, and Kamsa achieved the same perfection by having a fearful attitude towards Krishna. And Chaidyadeyo, which means Shishupal, he also attained similar destination or same destination by having enviousness of the Lord. So when we're discussing either you like somebody or dislike somebody with relation to Krishna, who is the absolute truth, they reach the perfect destination. Although Acharyas of course explain that the gopis and the Vrishnis who attained destination, they went to the spiritual planet of the Lord, whereas those who cultivate this fearful or demoniac attitudes against Krishna, they go to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. But still, because impersonal Brahmajyoti, Paramatma and Bhagavan are on the same level, they are Advaya. So therefore, it is said that they achieve the similar destination. So we see here that by affection to the Lord, one can achieve transcendence. Even by having enviousness towards the Lord, one can achieve transcendence. But in this particular place, the Brahmanas, they were neither inclined towards Krishna, they were neither disinclined towards Krishna. So they will not achieve any of this destination. Their only goal was to go to the heavenly planets. So that's why they have this impersonalistic tendencies. Correct. So, and also, this pastime, we see that in the last couple of verses, I think 10th and 11th verses mentioned that the Brahmanas were very expert in arranging all the different paraphernalias, in following all the Vedic rituals perfectly and properly. So that reflects that they were learned. It's not that these Brahmanas were doing something out of their own mental concoction. They were learned Brahmanas, but still they were completely ignorant, completely indifferent to the Lord. Whereas the wives, whom we will see in the next few verses, they were apparently ignorant. Okay, they would not know what is happening with respect to the intricacies of the sacrifice. But then they were fully realized because they wanted to dedicate their lives to Krishna. They wanted to serve Krishna as soon as he requested this food from them. A couple of words are very significant in this verse, especially the last line. This is Snigdha Mai Ushita Dhiya. Correct? Mai Ushita Dhiya and Snigdha are related to each other. So Snigdha means having affection for the Lord. Snigdha also means one who has love for the Lord, or whose heart is very soft, that it's quite sweet, and it can be the residence of the Lord's loving relationship with that devotee. So that is Snigdha. And Mai Ushita Dhiya. Mai Ushita Dhiya means their intelligence resides in Krishna. So when Krishna is talking about these wives of the Brahmanas, he is qualifying them with these two qualities. One is they have affection for the Lord, that is Snigdha, and Mayushita Dhiya, that they have their intelligence is always residing in me. And they are interrelated in such that one who is affectionate towards Krishna, his intelligence will always be connected to Krishna, such that he always does those activities, he always serves the Lord favorably, and whatever activities are not favorable to the Lord, he completely rejects them. That can happen only when there is an affection for the Lord. At the same time, affection for the Lord will increase when the intelligence is trained in such a way that one does not act adversely to Krishna's instructions, and one follows Krishna's instruction. And as one's intelligence is fixed up in such consciousness, then affection for the Lord automatically increases. Right, so we are discussing nectar of devotion in Gurukula classes now. So there, when Rupa Goswami writes, it starts with Vaidhi Bhakti, and then it should lead one to Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous affection for the Lord. So Vaidhi Bhakti is supposed to enable the practicing devotee to control his senses, to control his mind, to regulate his life, so that by that regulation and by performing regulated devotional service, his spontaneous affection for the Lord also increases. Right? So these two words are interrelated in such a way that one who has either of these things will reach the result of the other one. And in Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam at several places, Krishna speaks about intelligence, about how one should have one focused intelligence and so on. Specifically, in the last few classes, we also discussed about Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, Krishna speaks about this Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana Bahushaka Henantascha Buddhyo Vyavasayinam. So there's one place where he says that intelligence should be fixed. And if intelligence is not fixed in that way, then Bahushaka Henantascha. So once one will be attracted to different things, and one will have desires to accomplish different things. So in this particular case also, if we see, although the Brahmanas, to fulfill the goal, which was to go to the heavenly planets, where they wanted varieties of enjoyment in the heavenly planets, that Bahushaka, different types of enjoyment with respect to different senses that they will have. There will be more varieties, more enjoyment with respect to eating, more enjoyment with respect to sleeping, more enjoyment with respect to seeing nice things, more enjoyment with respect to the kind of environment that they will have there. Then more enjoyment, sensual enjoyment is also there more. So different varieties they are looking forward to, and for that they have fixed up their intelligence to perform that particular sacrifice. But is Krishna pointing that kind of intelligence here? No. Intelligence should be fixed on the goal itself. Now, although the Brahmanas have fixed up their intelligence in performing this particular sacrifice, but their goal is Bahushaka. It's varied, to enjoy their senses in different ways. Whereas when it comes to Krishna consciousness with respect to the wives of the Brahmanas, their intelligence is fixed because at this point of time they want to serve Krishna, and their goal also is Krishna alone. Right? So that's Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. And of course, in the 44th verse also of Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, it says Bhogeshwara Prasaktanam Taya Paharda Chitasam. That is also applicable to the Brahmanas because they wanted this Bhoga to enjoy themselves, and they also wanted to experience the Aishwarya of the heavenly planets. So they also do not have this fixed mindset. Although apparently it may seem that for performing this particular sacrifice, they have fixed up their intelligence to carry out this sacrifice in a very nice manner. But when we speak about Vedic culture, about transcendental nature, ultimately the understanding should be that this is not Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, because ultimately it is meant for one's own personal enjoyment. It's not meant for Krishna's pleasure. And specifically, Krishna also speaks about fixing one's mind upon himself in the 12th chapter, 8th verse. He says, Mayyeva mana adatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya. So what Krishna is saying is, Mayi ushitadhya, it is similar to Mayi buddhim niveshaya. And then he says, Nivasishyasi mayyeva ata urdhvam na samshaya. So, by engaging all intelligence in Krishna, by fixing one's mind on Krishna, they will always live in me without a doubt. So, this is what Krishna speaks in the 12th chapter. And in the 11th canto, chapter 19, text 36, Krishna, while speaking this Uddhava Gita, giving all these philosophical explanations to Uddhava, he defines what fixing intelligence on Krishna means. Okay, and there he says, Samo man nishtha buddher. So this is the first line of that verse. So he says, Samo man nishtata buddher, which means absorbing the intelligence in me constitutes mental equilibrium. Right? This is how Krishna defines what it actually means. So when we say intelligence should be fixed in me, okay, when we speak about the mind to be absorbed in me, we can say we are always thinking about Krishna. Correct? So man mana bhava mad bhakta, Krishna also says. So you always think about him. So the mind is actively engaged. And what about intelligence? How can one impose, or one can reside with his intelligence onto Krishna? There are different ways in which it can be understood. One of the ways is mentioned by Krishna himself in this 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says that absorbing the intelligence in me constitutes mental equilibrium. Equilibrium, the word, means balance, right? It means balance where one is not affected, or one does not undergo, or one does not have his mind waver through according to the waves of his desire. So mental equilibrium also means that he is free from dualities. Krishna speaks about this duality in Bhagavad Gita at several places. And he says that the living entities within this material world are influenced by these dualities. So intelligence to be fixed on Krishna means that one is not influenced by the dualities of this material world. Correct? He says, no, Ichha Dvesha Smuttena Dvandva Mohena Bharata Sammoham Sargayanti Sarva Bhutani Sammoham Sargayanti Parantapa. He says, so every living entity is influenced by this Ichha and Dvesha. There is duality within this material world. Fixing one's intelligence on Krishna frees one from this duality. Okay, so an aspiring devotee is supposed to fix one's intelligence on Krishna so that he can come over these dualities. So duality is always there, and when there is duality, then those who desire, those things that we desire, and if you are able to experience those desires, there is fulfillment of that desire, then there is sense of happiness. And those things which we do not like, and those things come in our life, then there's an experience of distress. So this is duality. So through one's intelligence, which arises from transcendental knowledge, one should always distinguish between these distress situation and the desires. So when desires are fulfilled, then one becomes very elated. When distress comes or when miserable situations happen, he feels very distressed. To be fixed up in intelligence means one maintains his mental equilibrium. One is not excited when he enjoys or when he gets material enjoyment, and one is not too distressed also. He is not lamenting also when things do not go according to his plan. Correct? This is mental equilibrium. And this is also mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself says, speaking about the nature of this material world, he says that Dvaite Bhadra Bhadra Jnana Sabha Manodharm Ei Bhala Ei Manda Ei Sabha Brahma. He says that within this material world there is Dvaita. There are two things. There are only two things. If we see all the activities which is happening within this material world, there are only two things which are specifically related to us. One is there are things which we are happy with, and there are things which we are not happy with. So right from our own life, from our own body, from our own thoughts, then what happens with the family members around us, what happens in the society, what happens in the nation, country, in the international aspects. Everywhere we have these two things. There are things with which we feel comfortable with, there are things which we are happy with, and then there are things which we are not happy with. So everything is judged based upon that. So even if a politician who has no relationship to us and he claims something that this is what I'm going to do, and it aligns with what our thought process is, then there's a certain amount of minimal comfort that okay, this is what is going to happen. And when something wrong is being told, then people get agitated. We see this is being reflected in the social media also, with all social media being very prominent. People are always opinionating. It means whatever happens in the world, they have an opinion. Either they are for it or they are against it. So there is always a duality with respect to every small aspect of our life, from the micro aspect to the macro aspect, to everything that happens. So this is all Dvaita. This is all duality of this material world. And one who's engrossed in those duality, he will not be able to fix up his intelligence properly onto the Lord. So that's why it is said that if a devotee has to make progress, then he should not be too much attached to all these different things, because that is only going to agitate one's mind, and we are only going to see what is right and what is wrong within the realm of this material world. And this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says is that this is Manodharma, and he says Ei Bhala, that this is good, and Ei Manda, this is bad, Ei Sab Brahma, these are all illusory in nature. Because if we see our life, our journey, our life in this material world, it's just like a dream. When we undergo, when there's a dream, so the dream seems very factual. The dream seems very factual. When we are dreaming, at least, the dream seems very factual. And the experiences also seem quite real. But after one wakes up, then he understands that these dreams are actually completely illusory in nature. They are created by all the impressions that the mind has. And these impressions somehow come together without any proper reason, and then they create experiences, and they create instances or stories around these impressions, which create experiences which the living entity either enjoys or he suffers. But then, just like these dreams do not have any bearing on the reality, similarly, our life in this particular lifetime has no bearing on the reality or on the reality of our own selves and the reality of the absolute truth of the spiritual world also, because our position is temporary at this point of time. So what we are going through, although we take our life to be very important and whatever activities we are performing in this life to be quite significant, but in the ultimate sense, if we see, once we leave this body and we go to the next life, whatever happened in this life seems, or rather it's quite insignificant, and there is no relation to the living entity with whatever activities he is going through in this life. And similarly can be said about past lives also. None of us remember what happened in our past life, and in that life, if you think about it, we would have made, or we would have thought that our life was quite significant and we wanted some good things to happen to us. We did not want bad things to happen to us. We wanted mental satisfaction, peace, so on, all those things which we aspire for in this life. We have aspired for the same things in our previous so many lifetimes also. We may have achieved it, we may not have achieved it, but the journey of aspiring for different good things keeps on continuing, and the experience of suffering also keeps continuing. And one who is not able to come out of this repeated process of birth and death, this punarjanma jayaya, if a living entity is not endeavoring for that, that similar experience will keep on continuing. It's like sleeping at night, or it's like continuous sleeping. Right? So when we are in the lap of the witch called Maya, what are we doing? We are just sleeping. So it's the entire journey of ourselves within this material world is just like going through different dreams, because it has no bearing on reality. But when one takes to Krishna consciousness, when one takes to devotional life, then that has bearing on reality, because the activities which are there in the real life, in the spiritual world, those activities the living entity starts to perform in his lifetime itself. So they do not retain the material nature of those activities. They become spiritual in nature, and that enables one to elevate himself to spiritual consciousness. So those are live. So when one is performing Krishna conscious activities, he is alive. At that point only he is alive, he is woken up. Every other time he is not performing devotional activities or dedicating himself to Krishna, those are all like dreams. So when we say about dreams, it's not that this material world is unreal in that sense. The world is real. Okay, the experience which you go through is real. The activities which you perform is also real. But ultimately, the conclusion of it, or the experiences which we go through is also real within this material world. And so this material world is said to be illusory in nature, because our position here is not permanent. Our position here is not permanent. It's temporary, and whatever is temporary, then it has no bearing on reality. So it's not that the body that we have got now, or the bodies that we had in our previous lives, this is not the same body that we are going to have in the spiritual planet also, because these are all temporary. These keep on changing. They keeps on moving, whereas the reality is the eternal constitutional position of the living entity, its own swarupa, which is there in the spiritual world, which can be revived by performing devotional service. So that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says here, all these dualities that we experience within this material world, they are all manodharma, he says. So these are all concocted activities, which we think that if we perform this activity, that is good. If I perform charity, that is good. If I perform sacrifices, that is good, because that is going to enable me to go to heavenly planets. The Brahmanas are thinking like this. So they are actually on that mundane platform where they are saying duality, because going to the heavenly planets is not the same as going to the spiritual world. They again have to come back. Correct? Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartino Arjuna. So they have to come back again. So what they are seeing here is that they are not happy at this point of time. So they are going to use the Vedic literatures as the vehicle to go to the heavenly planets, and there they will be able to enjoy themselves. So they are seeing duality. That now they are not happy. In heavenly planets, there is lots of happiness, there is lots of sense gratification. So we will be able to do this much happiness. And once we come back again, if they are pious enough, they'll get a good human body. Then again perform the same sacrifice, go back to the heavenly planets. So this is all manodharma. These are concocted. And it's interesting that even in Vedic literatures also, this manodharma is kind of encouraged, just so that people can have good faith on these Vedic literatures, and they start taking up Krishna consciousness ultimately, in the ultimate sense. So manodharma is explained here. So these are those activities which are recommended in the Vedic literatures, but they take a person only to a temporary result. And then there is again, similar to this manodharma, there's in Bhagavatam It is also mentioned as Manoratha. That word is also used in this particular verse from Canto 5, chapter 18. This comes, Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati kinchana sarvair gunai satra samasati suraha harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathe nasati dhavato bahihi. So there is Manoratha that is mentioned here. So Manoratha means the chariot of the mind. And this is a little different from Manodharma, because in Manodharma, one is clearly identifying, using his intelligence to distinguish what is good and what is bad within this material world. So therefore, that use of intelligence is not very good, but still, he's discriminating, at least that is there, and is trying to find out what is good and what is bad for his own self. That is Manodharma. But when Manoratha is mentioned, then there is no control here. So as the chariot, this example comes in Kathopanishad, Srila Prabhupada also quotes this in Bhagavad Gita, that our whole body is like a chariot, and there are different horses. These horses are the five senses, and the reins which are controlling these horses is the mind. The driver is the intelligence, and the passenger is the living entity itself. And as the horses, they go here and there, then the chariot also wobbles around and goes here and there. So this is Manoratha. And if the mind is not able to control these senses, then the chariot, wherever it goes, the mind also goes there. So at least in Manodharma, there is some regulation. So Vedic literatures expose, or they speak about Manodharma, even though they are speaking about going to the heavenly planets, because there is some regulation that is involved, which may elevate a person from Tamoguna to Rajoguna to Satvaguna, and so on. But when it comes to Manoratha, then Manoratha dhavato bahi. Dhavato means he runs. As the mind goes here and there, then he runs along with that. So there is no control in Manoratha. So both of them, but if we see ultimately both Manodharma as well as Manoratha, both are useless in the sense that intelligence is not disposed. It's not fixed up in Krishna consciousness that way. So, yeah. So, so what Krishna is saying here, or he's indicating, or he's differentiating between the Brahmanas and the wives of the Brahmanas. So the wife of the Brahmanas will be able to give food to Krishna and to the cowherd boys, because their intelligence is always fixed in Krishna, which means they are not influenced by this Manodharma or Manoratha and so on. So even in our life also, this is the example that we are supposed to follow. Whereas at least for the Brahmanas, this is completely their Manodharma, that's what they are doing. What we are supposed to do is again fix our intelligence in Krishna. So in Bhagavad Gita itself, if we see, there are two ways in which Krishna mentions how one can control one's mind. One is through this mechanical process, where in the 6th chapter Ashtanga Yoga is mentioned, where one controls the senses, and by controlling the senses, one controls the mind, and by controlling the mind, one's intelligence becomes fixed up. So that's like kind of the ascending process from bottom up approach. So first, the senses should be withdrawn from the sense objects. Right? Of course, that also requires some amount of determination, but that's the mechanical process. By performing this Ashtanga Yoga, his Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and so on, by performing this mechanical process, his mind becomes completely fixed up. The mind is not agitated anymore. It becomes Vyavasayatmika. And by fixing up the mind on a particular goal, then the intelligence starts acting accordingly. And that way, one can make progress in spiritual life. That's the mechanical process, right? And then Krishna also speaks about this Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto. So where he says that intelligence should be guiding the mind, and when the mind is controlled, then the senses will not go and search for different sense objects. So that's the top-up approach. So in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says that greater than the sense is the mind, and greater than the mind is the intelligence, and greater than the intelligence than the living entity itself, right? So that comes. So the mechanical process involves controlling the senses, and through that getting the equilibrium of mind, and then having a proper intelligence to fix oneself in spiritual life. Whereas the sublime process, or the more easiest process, is to using discrimination, gain transcendental knowledge, using this discrimination, control the mind, and when the mind is controlled in that way, when the mind is regulated that way, then the senses are automatically controlled. So Srila Prabhupada, he explained this particular descending process in Parampara, that to control the senses, one need not artificially withdraw one's senses from the sense objects. One should engage these sense objects in Krishna's service. So the senses, Hrishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Richate. So using one's senses, one can serve the Lord, and that way one's senses becomes purified, the mind is purified, and the intelligence is fixed on the Lord. So this is the sublime process. So to perform such activities requires transcendental knowledge. To perform such activities required fixed up intelligence. So intelligence will be controlling the mind. Whereas this bottom-up approach, where the senses are artificially withdrawn from their sense objects and then anticipating that mind will be controlled, it has led to several fall downs in throughout the history. We have seen the Puranas also with respect to Vishwamitra, even with respect to Bharat Maharaj also, because the senses are withdrawn, but then it does not stem from the process of Krishna consciousness, where transcendental knowledge about Krishna is there, and one is motivated only to serve Krishna through his senses. That way the senses are automatically controlled, and it is helped up. This control of the senses is also helped by the higher taste that one gets. Right? So when we perform devotional service, there's a higher taste also that one experiences, and because of that also the senses are automatically withdrawn from the sense objects. So again, in Nectar of Devotion also, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that when he's discussing about all the 64 angas of bhakti, he specifically mentions that renunciation is not an anga of bhakti. So it's a specific chapter, I think 13th chapter, 14th chapter. Very specifically, he says, Rupa Goswami says that renunciation is not one of the angas of bhakti. Devotional service itself will lead to proper renunciation. Transcendental knowledge, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, is an anga of bhakti. Of course, devotional practices which he mentions in all the 64 angas, they are also have to be performed, but only doing renunciation where one's senses are withdrawn from the sense objects, that is not classified as a limb of bhakti, because it does not lead one to devotional service. Right? So it's an artificial and mechanical process which may work or which may not work. There is no surety of success, as Prabhupada says. So those yogis, jnanis who are performing all these different activities pertaining to their own specific desires, they may achieve success, they may not achieve success. It is not possible. It is not sure. But one who takes up Krishna consciousness, because his intelligence is fixed up right from the start, and because his mind is being controlled by that intelligence, and the senses are automatically engaged in Krishna's service, so that way his success is sure. Srila Prabhupada several places he mentions that one who takes up this process of Krishna consciousness sincerely and seriously, success is assured for him in this life and in the next life also. Right? So this is fixing up one's mind in Krishna consciousness. So the Brahmanas were not like that. Again, coming to that same distinction. So although the Brahmanas are fixed up in studying, of course they knew all the mantras, they have studied, and they have regulated their life also to study all these Vedic mantras, recite those mantras properly with proper pronunciation and all. They're employing all the Vedic rituals to perform this particular sacrifice. But still, they are in manodharma stage. Their senses are not controlled. So it's very unique in the sense that their senses are regulated to perform that particular sacrifice. And Brahmanas means they have to have a very regulated life. It's not that they can be a gross sense enjoyer and at the same time perform sacrifice and expect also to get elevated to the heavenly planets. Their life, a Brahmana's life, one who wants to elevate himself to heavenly planets, his present life should be completely regulated. He cannot sleep when the sun is rising. That's not allowed. No, that's sinful for a Brahmana. Similarly, engage in different activities. Now, every small rule that is mentioned in the Dharma Shastras, a Brahmana must follow, and his life should be sinless in that way. Then only he'll be able to elevate himself to heavenly planets. So his mind is completely regulated in that way. His mind is completely controlled, but still it comes under the classification of manodharma only, because what is he doing by all this regulation and control? He's trying to elevate himself to heavenly planets. That's all. Correct? So that is completely useless in the sense, because as we discussed, all this life, all this entire life is a life of pretension. We can say we pretend to be somebody in this life, we have pretended to be somebody else in the previous life, and we are going to pretend to be somebody else in the next life. So these are all pretensions that we are going through lifetime after lifetime. So even if the Brahmanas get elevated to the heavenly planets, they'll only pretend to be one of the demigods, one of the associates of demigods. They're pretending to enjoy themselves there. And anyway, in the material world, there is no ultimate enjoyment. So although they're pretending to enjoy, they think in their mind that they're really happy. And ultimately, they have to come down also. So one who goes to heavenly planets and does not understand that after thousands of years he has to come back, it's still craziness is there in the mind. This is all manodharma. It's all completely useless. So although their life is regulated, but their mind is not controlled. Correct? So only regulation of the mind does not lead to mind control or controlling the mind for a higher purpose of going to the spiritual world, of engaging in devotional service. So regulation is there, but control is not there. But when we are speaking about regulation, about control, about following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, that is not only mechanically controlling the mind, mechanically following the rules, mechanically renouncing the different objects of sense enjoyment. It is also about the goal where one should be fixed up to. So the goal is to please Krishna. And we do not engage in sense gratificatory activities because it disturbs us from performing devotional activities. It agitates the mind. So renunciation is not so that's why Srila Rupa Goswami does not mention renunciation as a anga of bhakti. Renunciation will help. And he explains that also, that renunciation and knowledge, and he says even jnana and vairagya in the initial stages of devotional service, it may help. But ultimately, when bhakti matures, then this jnana and renunciation, jnana and vairagya, they are not that important. Which is not to say that as for progressive bhakti, one starts engaging in speculative activities or one starts becoming sense enjoyer. Because as he elevates himself in devotional service, automatically these things go off. Right? Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyasha Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahitukam. So it's not that by performing jnana and vairagya, by studying different scriptures, by accumulating so much knowledge, following this neti process, trying to kind of drill through all this Vedanta philosophy, and then by proper renunciation, we are going to elevate ourselves in bhakti. Because these are not angas of bhakti. By performing devotion service itself, all the transcendental knowledge is automatically revealed, and renunciation from sense objects automatically happens. Attachment to sense objects automatically go off because the intelligence is fixed in Krishna and one has elevated his consciousness and he is getting higher taste. And if a practicing devotee who is not experiencing that higher taste is just come to Krishna consciousness and is artificially renouncing, he will not be able to do so because the mind is not controlled. And at the same time, as he makes progress further and further, then the transcendental knowledge, the realization comes, and when he interacts with the sense objects, it is with an attitude that I am not the enjoyer. Correct? So when we speak about transcendental knowledge, this is the realization of this. Transcendental knowledge does not mean how well versed one is in Vedic scriptures. Transcendental knowledge or jnana means the realization that all the interactions which the senses have with the sense objects is not for my own personal enjoyment. It's for satisfying Krishna. Whatever material objects we have, everything should be offered to Krishna, and that way, the goal of life is met. So this is intelligence, this is jnana. So this realization comes when one performs devotional service. So bhaktya sanjayatya bhaktya. So as devotional service is performed more and more, then one makes progress in devotional service more and more, and renunciation is automatically attained. And a practicing devotee, when he, because of his not being fixed up in Krishna consciousness, if he engages in material activities also, he engages in sense gratificatory also, it creates disturbance in the mind. The mind becomes agitated. And when the mind is agitated, then the intelligence cannot be fixed up properly. Correct? And the realization does not come. And renunciation, of course, is not there. And one does not make progress in devotional service also. So that's why Srila Rupa Goswami says, initially, it may require, one who is not completely matured in devotional service, for him, renunciation may be one of the aspects. Still, he does not classify that as an anga of bhakti. It may help. He says it may help, but it is not an anga of bhakti. But as devotional service progresses, then automatically all these things are achieved. We also say, as devotees perform devotional service, then all the qualities are manifested in the personality of the devotee. We saw this verse, Yasyasya Bhakti Bhagavata Kichana Sarvair Gunai Satra Samasate Suraha. All the qualities of Sura can refer to demigods. Sura can also refer to great devotees or saintly personalities. So all these qualities which the saintly personalities have, all the good qualities that the demigods have, it automatically is manifested by a person who performs devotional service to the Lord. So this is what fixing one's intelligence means. So one who fixes his intelligence on Krishna, whose mind is controlled, mind is regulated, activities are regulated, the senses are regulated. So that way he makes progress in Krishna consciousness, in the ultimate goal of life. So the wives of Brahmanas were in that particular stage, whereas these Brahmanas, they were not, although they were performing all these amazing activities of performing the sacrifices. Right, so these are some points. So I'll stop here. Have any questions, comments, or anything else to add? Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
They were very much devoted to him, the wives of the Brahmanas. So when he gives instruction to them that please, when you go, don't tell that we are hungry.
Yeah.
Krishna, so he says that. So I mean, just if you think about it, even Krishna is as soft as a rose, and he can be as hard as a thunderbolt. Yeah. So I just thought about Snigdha. He's very soft as well. He's Mriduhari, another name for him. And another point that I thought was Dhiya. Dhiya also, he is Dhiyapati. So in second canto, one of the verse where it says that he is Shriyapati, he is Dharapati, he is Dhiyapati. Yeah. So for us to have, because this intelligence, every second we have to take a decision.
Yes.
Whether it is we are going to surrender to Krishna, or we are going to surrender to Maya.
Yes.
So for our intelligence to be fixed, we need to surrender to Krishna. We need to take shelter of him. Ultimately, he is the source of that intelligence. So he's Dhiyapati. I just thought of this word actually.
Yes. Yeah. So I think this point was discussed in the previous class also. So I did not elaborate on that because I think Hrishikesh Prabhu mentioned this particular verse and he explained about that. So yes, that's correct. So one has to fix. Actually, I had another point also that this is this point of surrender. So after one's intelligence is fixed, then it's not that things stop here. One has to further go ahead and surrender also. So anukulasa sankalpam, pratikulasa varjanam, all those things come up. So fixing one's intelligence also means anukulasa sankalpam, whatever is required to be done must be done. That's fixing up intelligence. And then pratikulasa varjanam, whatever should be avoided. So as you said, each and every moment of our life, we are faced with this situation. Whether we should do this or we should not do this, whether it's going to help me in Krishna consciousness or not. So one has to have that kind of a discriminative understanding. And when the discriminative understanding is there with the goal, with understanding that all the different senses, the mind and intelligence is reposed onto Krishna only for his own, or for his pleasure, then automatically our desires or our inclination to perform sense gratification automatically takes a backseat because intelligence is fixed up. So anukula sankalpa pratikula svajam rakshati iti vishwaso. That's also a thought, or see, the mind may go here and there, but through one's intelligence one should always know that because I am engaging in devotional service, Krishna will always protect me. So these are all different aspects of the intelligence itself, where one is always convincing himself that he is doing something which is sublime and best, and Krishna is always there to help him and to basically help him and give his